One broken down car, one impossible choice, a gay single father drowning in accusations he couldn't fight, exhausted from working double shifts just to keep his daughter out of foster care, driving home through a Boston blizzard that matched the chaos in his life. Then he saw him, a stranger, standing in the swirling snow beside a luxury car, desperate and alone. He could have kept driving. He should have kept driving. He had every reason to look the other way, but he stopped. He didn't know that one act of kindness would become the most dangerous and miraculous decision of his life. The wipers scraped across the windshield in their endless rhythm as Ryan Mitchell's eyes burned from the double shift he just pulled at the UPS warehouse. Loading packages, scanning boxes, moving, always moving. Because if he stopped, if he let himself think too long about the trial date circled in red on their kitchen calendar, he'd fall apart. 3 weeks. He had 3 weeks before everything ended. Then he saw it, hazard lights blinking weakly through the curtain of snow. A sleek Audi pulled onto the shoulder of Beacon Hill Drive, the kind of vehicle that cost more than he'd make in 5 years. A man stood beside it, his silhouette barely visible in the expensive suit, one hand frantically jabbing at his phone. Ryan's foot eased off the gas pedal. His car slowed. "Keep driving," the voice in his head whispered. "You're exhausted. Someone with a car like that has roadside assistance, has money, has people who can help." But something about the man's posture, the way his shoulders shook from cold and frustration, made Ryan's chest tighten. Jake's voice cut through his thoughts, as clear as if his late husband were sitting in the passenger seat. "Character isn't about what you do when things are good, Ryan. It's what you do when everything's falling apart." His jaw clenched. Everything was already falling apart. Gregory Phillips. The name tasted like acid. 6 months ago, $47,000 had vanished from their small landscaping company's accounts. 6 months ago, Gregory had looked him in the eye and accused him of taking it. 6 months ago, Ryan's entire world had collapsed. The worst part, Gregory had been convincing. The doctored financial records, the forged signatures, the fake email trail, and all of it pointed to Ryan. And Gregory had better lawyers, better connections, better everything. The evidence looks bad. Michael Rodriguez, his court-appointed attorney, had told him last week, kind eyes full of sympathy that felt like pity. "I believe you're innocent, Ryan, but proving it, that's going to be tough." If convicted, he'd get up to 5 years. 5 years of Madison growing up without him. 5 years of his brilliant little girl being shuffled through foster homes because Jake was gone and Ryan's mother lived too far away to take her. The thought of 7-year-old Madison with her missing front tooth and her fascination with constellations alone in the system made Ryan's heart shatter. His car rolled to a stop behind the Audi. The snow hit him like a wall the moment he stepped out, instantly soaking through his already damp clothes. He raised one hand as he approached, making sure the stranger could see him clearly, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The man turned, and even through the snow, Ryan could see his body tense. Fear. He was afraid of him. "Sir," Ryan called out, staying several feet back, making sure both hands were visible. "You okay, car trouble?" He hesitated, studying Ryan. Snow collected on his perfectly styled hair, his tailored suit completely soaked. Then, as if making a decision, he nodded. "It just died. Won't turn over at all." His voice was steady despite the situation. Controlled, professional, the kind of voice that was used to being heard, to commanding respect. "Mind if I take a look?" Ryan asked. "I'm not a mechanic, but I've kept enough old cars running to maybe help." Another pause. Then, "Please, I'd appreciate it. At Heart Stories, we believe that kindness always returns to us in unexpected ways. What small act of kindness have you performed recently? Sometimes the smallest gesture can change someone's entire world." The Suffolk County Criminal Court loomed before Ryan like a mountain of judgment. His borrowed suit from Michael felt too tight around the collar, his hands clammy, his heart racing so fast he thought he might pass out. This was it. The moment that would decide whether he got to tuck Madison in tonight or whether he'd spend the next 5 years watching her grow up through prison glass. Michael sat beside him, organizing papers with practiced efficiency, but Ryan could see the worry in his attorney's eyes. They both knew how this looked. They both knew what happened to people like Ryan when they went up against people like Gregory. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Noah Bennett," the bailiff announced. Ryan stood on shaking legs, his eyes fixed on the floor. He couldn't bring himself to look up, couldn't bear to see the face of the person who held his entire future in their hands. But then something made him glance up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. The judge entered, black robes flowing, his posture commanding and authoritative as he took his seat behind the bench, and Ryan's breath caught in his throat. Wait, he knew that face, those eyes, that way of carrying himself with quiet authority. His mind flashed back to the snowy night, the man beside the Audi, the gratitude in his eyes when Ryan had fixed his battery terminal. No, it couldn't be. But the more he stared, the more certain he became, and the more impossible it seemed. The man he'd helped 3 weeks ago was now sitting behind that bench, holding a gavel that would determine his fate. His heart hammered in his chest. Was he imagining this? The lighting was different now, harsh fluorescent instead of darkness and snow. He was in formal robes instead of a soaked suit. His hair was perfectly styled instead of wet and covered in snowflakes. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe his desperate mind was seeing connections that didn't exist, looking for hope in impossible places. But those eyes, the shape of his face, the way he held himself. Ryan's hands gripped the edge of the table. He wanted to say something, to ask, to confirm, but how could he? What would he even say? "Excuse me, Your Honor, did I fix your car 3 weeks ago?" He glanced at Michael, but his attorney was focused on his notes, completely unaware of the storm raging inside Ryan's head. The judge, Judge Bennett, was looking down at the case file, his expression neutral and professional. If he recognized Ryan, he gave no sign of it, not a flicker of acknowledgement, not a hint of familiarity. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe Ryan was losing his mind. The proceedings began, and Ryan tried to focus, tried to listen to the prosecutor's opening statements and Michael's responses. But his mind kept returning to that face behind the bench. It looked like him. It really looked like him. But how could it be? What were the odds throughout the hearing? Ryan found himself stealing glances at Judge Bennett, trying to be certain, trying to reconcile the desperate man in the snow with this stern figure of authority. Every time he looked, he was more convinced, and every time he told himself he had to be wrong. Then something happened that made his heart stop. The prosecutor was presenting the photocopied financial documents, and Judge Bennett leaned forward, his eyes sharp as he examined them. "Ms. Wilson, these are photocopies. Where are the originals?" Ryan's breath caught. It was him. It had to be him. But he never looked at Ryan, never gave any sign that he knew who he was. His face remained perfectly neutral, perfectly professional as he questioned the prosecutor about the evidence. "I have concerns about these documents," he said firmly. "This court will not proceed based on photocopies of photocopies. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm granting your motion for forensic examination. We'll reconvene when we have properly authenticated documents." The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and Ryan flinched. As the courtroom began to clear, Ryan remained seated, his mind reeling. Michael was talking beside him, explaining what had just happened, how unusual it was, how lucky they were, but Ryan barely heard him. His eyes were on Judge Bennett as he gathered his files and disappeared into his chambers. Was it him? Had the man he'd helped in the snow just saved him right back? Or was his desperate mind playing tricks on him? Creating hope where there was none, he wanted to believe. He wanted so badly to believe, but he couldn't be sure. And that uncertainty would haunt him for the next 2 weeks. Noah Bennett leaned against his chamber's door, his hands trembling as he pressed them flat against the wood. His heart was racing, his mind spinning with the magnitude of what had just happened. Ryan Mitchell, the man who'd stopped in the swirling snow to help him, the man who'd refused payment and smiled wearily and told him his name before disappearing into the night. He'd seen the recognition in Ryan's eyes when he had entered the courtroom, watched him do a double take, watched confusion and hope and uncertainty flash across his face. He suspected, but he wasn't sure. And Noah had given him no confirmation, kept his face perfectly neutral, because to acknowledge it, to show any sign that he knew him, would be grounds for immediate recusal. And if he recused himself, this case would go to Judge Harrison. Noah pressed his fingers to his temples. He'd just bent every ethical rule in the book. He'd used his position to demand evidence examination that should have been done months ago. He'd fought for a defendant he had personal contact with, but what choice did he have? Let an innocent man go to prison because the system was too lazy to do its job properly. Our justice system often fails to see the complexity of human beings beyond the labels attached to their files. In moments when rules conflict with moral clarity, finding the courage to listen to our conscience might be the highest form of justice we can achieve. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Ryan went through those motions, working at the warehouse, picking up Madison from her after-school program, reading bedtime stories about the stars, pretending everything was fine. But every night he lay awake wondering, was it him? Had he recognized him? Was that why he demanded the forensic examination? Or was he imagining connections that didn't exist? Seeing miracles where there was only coincidence? Daddy, you're thinking too loud. Madison mumbled one night, half asleep beside him. She crawled into his bed again, clutching the constellation nightlight Jake had given her before he died. It's keeping me awake. Sorry, baby girl, go back to sleep. Is it the court thing? Yeah. Mrs. Winters says judges help good people. They have magic hammers. Ryan smiled despite everything. I hope so, Emmy. I really hope so. The forensic accountant's report arrived on Tuesday. Michael called Ryan at work, his voice shaking with emotion. Ryan, the report, it's everything we needed. Gregory fabricated everything. The digital records prove it. You're going to be okay. Ryan's legs gave out. He sat down hard on a stack of boxes, phone pressed to his ear, tears streaming down his face. We're going back to court tomorrow. Judge Bennett wants to reconvene immediately. Judge Bennett, was it him? Maybe tomorrow he'd know for sure. After careful examination of the evidence, Judge Bennett said from the bench, his voice carrying absolute authority, this court finds that the prosecution's case is built on fraudulent documents. The digital banking records conclusively demonstrate that Gregory Phillips, not Ryan Mitchell, committed the embezzlement in question. Mr. Mitchell, all charges against you are hereby dismissed with prejudice. The courtroom erupted in noise, but Ryan heard none of it. His hands were shaking, his vision blurring with tears he couldn't control. Free, he was free. Furthermore, Judge Bennett continued, his voice cutting through the chaos, I'm referring this case to the district attorney with a strong recommendation that charges be filed immediately against Gregory Phillips for fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and obstruction of justice. The gavel came down with finality. Ryan looked up at him, really looked at him, and their eyes met for just a fraction of a second. And in that moment, he knew it was him. It had always been him. He'd known who Ryan was from the moment his case crossed his desk, and he'd fought for him anyway. But before Ryan could say anything, before he could even process what he wanted to say, Judge Bennett was standing, gathering his files, disappearing into his chambers with the same professional efficiency he'd shown throughout the trial. Michael was hugging him, talking about civil suits and compensation, but Ryan barely heard him. His eyes were on that closed chamber's door. He wanted to thank him, needed to thank him. But how could he? How could he approach a judge who just saved his life and ask if he was the man whose car he'd fixed in the snow? It seemed impossible, inappropriate. So he left the courthouse that day with freedom in his hands and questions in his heart. But he knew, deep down he knew, and somehow he had to find a way to say, thank you. 6 weeks passed like a dream. Ryan found a better job at Home Depot in Boston's Prudential Center. Better pay, better hours, benefits that actually meant something. He was home for dinner every night. Madison drew pictures of her daddy being free that covered their refrigerator in stars and misspelled words. Life was good, better than he'd ever imagined it could be after everything that had happened. But something nagged at him. He'd never gotten to properly thank the judge, never gotten to confirm what he knew in his heart to be true, that he was the man from the snow, that he'd recognized him, that he'd risked everything to save him. He was restocking shelves in aisle 7 automotive supplies, which felt appropriate given how this whole thing started when a voice behind him said, "Excuse me, do you know where I might find battery terminals?" Ryan turned and there he was, not in judge's robes this time, not behind a bench with a gavel in his hand, just a man in jeans and a casual sweater, his hair perfectly styled, standing in the hardware store with a slight smile on his face. "It's you," Ryan breathed, the box of windshield wipers slipping from his hands. Recognition often comes with responsibility, and sometimes the greatest truths must remain unspoken until the proper time. When we recognize someone who has made a difference in our lives, finding the courage to acknowledge that connection can open doors to healing and new beginnings that neither person expected. I knew it in the courtroom. I thought I wasn't sure, but I knew. Ryan's voice shook slightly as he gathered the dropped wipers from the floor. Noah's smile widened, warmer now, more genuine. "You recognize me." "How could I not? Your face, your voice." But I kept thinking maybe I was imagining it. Maybe my mind was playing tricks because I was desperate. He took a step closer, his voice dropping. "You knew too. The whole time, you knew I was the guy who fixed your car. From the moment I saw your photo in the case file." Noah's voice was equally quiet. "The coffee mug I was holding hit the floor and shattered. But you couldn't say anything. If I'd acknowledged it, I would have had to recuse myself. Your case would have gone to Judge Harrison." Ryan closed his eyes, understanding washing over him. "And Judge Harrison would have convicted me. Almost certainly. He has a 94% conviction rate and no patience for public defenders." "So you risked everything." Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. "Your career, your reputation." "I could lose my position if anyone found out," Noah said quietly. "I broke about a dozen ethical guidelines, but I'd do it again." They stood in the middle of the hardware store, surrounded by mundane things, screws and paint cans and extension cords, and the moment felt sacred. "Why, Bob?" Ryan asked. "Why would you risk so much for someone you met once in the snow?" "Because that one meeting told me everything I needed to know about your character. A man who stops in a blizzard to help a stranger, using his own duct tape tools, refusing payment when he clearly needs it. That's not someone who steals from others. That's someone with integrity. And I couldn't watch an innocent man go to prison just because the system was too lazy to look at the real evidence." Ryan felt tears sting his eyes. "You saved my life, saved my daughter from losing her father." "You helped me first," said Noah softly. "You had every reason to keep driving that night. You were exhausted, worried, probably running through worst-case scenarios about your trial. But you stopped anyway. You showed me something I'd stopped believing existed. Real, uncomplicated human goodness. I never even learned your name that night. I know. I realized that later. You gave me yours, Ryan Mitchell. But you never asked mine, and I never offered it. If I had, would things have been different? I don't know, maybe, but maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to." "There's something else," Noah said, a smile playing at his lips. "During your trial, you brought your daughter to court once. She had to wait in the hallway while we were in session." Ryan nodded. "Madison, Mrs. Winters, was sick that day, and I had no one else to watch her. She drew me a picture, gave it to the bailiff to give to me." Noah's smile widened. "A judge with a superhero cape. She told him I had a magic hammer that made bad people go away." Despite everything, the weight of the conversation, the emotion churning in his chest, Ryan laughed. It burst out of him, genuine and surprised. "She thinks your gavel is magic. She's been telling everyone at school about how the nice man with the magic hammer saved her daddy. I'd love to see more of her drawings. Then with visible courage, with vulnerability showing through his professional composure. Maybe over coffee, if that's allowed. Now that the case is over, Ryan felt his heart do something complicated in his chest, something that felt like hope and gratitude, and the beginning of something neither of them had expected. "It's allowed," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "In fact, I'd really like that." Their coffee dates at Thinking Cup near Boston Common became a weekly ritual. Sometimes with Madison, sometimes without. Noah learned that Madison had inherited her love of astronomy from Jake, who had built a small observatory in their backyard before his accident. Ryan learned that Noah had faced his own struggles as a gay man in the judicial system, often hiding his personal life to avoid prejudice from more conservative colleagues. On their fourth date, a trip to the New England Aquarium with Madison, they stood watching the penguins waddle across their enclosure. Madison had run ahead to the sea lions, her yellow jacket bright against the gray winter day. "Daddy, hold Mr. Noah's hand so he doesn't get lost," Madison called back, already halfway to the next exhibit. I don't think," Ryan started, embarrassed. "It's okay," Noah said softly, slipping his hand into his. His fingers were warm despite the cold air. "For safety reasons." "Right, safety," Ryan agreed, his heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Noah's hand fit perfectly in his, like it belonged there, like this was always meant to happen. By month 3, they'd started having occasional dinners alone while Mrs. Winters watched Madison. Real dates where they could talk about hopes and fears without interruption, though Madison always demanded full reports afterward. "Did you hold hands? Did Daddy make his nervous laugh? Did you talk about me? You should always talk about me. I'm the best topic." Sometimes our greatest connections form in the spaces between our vulnerabilities and our strengths. The courage to open ourselves to new possibilities, especially after loss, requires us to recognize that loving again doesn't diminish what came before, it honors it by showing that we learned how precious connection truly is. One evening, after a particularly lovely dinner at a small Italian place in the North End, Ryan walked Noah to his car. The Audi had a new battery now, and sometimes Noah joked that he should write a thank you note to the pothole that had jostled the old terminal loose. "Can I tell you something?" Noah asked, leaning against his car. "Something I probably shouldn't say because it's too soon and might scare you away." "You can tell me anything." "When I saw your name on that docket, when I realized who you were, I was terrified. Not because of the ethical implications, though those were very real, but because in that one interaction on Beacon Hill, you'd shown me something I'd stopped believing existed in this world." "What's that?" "Goodness, real, uncomplicated human goodness. You had every reason to keep driving that night. You were exhausted, worried, facing trial in 3 weeks, but you stopped anyway. You used your own duct tape tools, got soaked helping a stranger, and refused payment. And I thought, this is someone worth knowing. This is someone worth fighting for." Ryan felt his eyes sting with unexpected emotion. "You risked everything for me." "I risked my career," Noah corrected gently. "You would have risked your daughter. Those aren't equivalent scales. What I did was the minimum that justice demanded. What you did that night was pure character." He kissed him then, soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "Madison's going to be insufferable when she finds out," Ryan said. "She'll probably demand a full report. She'll want to know if there were fireworks." "And what will you tell her?" Ryan pulled Noah close again. "I'll tell her there were fireworks, the best kind." 6 months later, Ryan proposed at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics during a special viewing night. He'd planned everything perfectly, except he'd made one crucial miscalculation. Madison could not keep a secret to save her life. They were walking toward the massive telescope where he'd planned to get down on one knee when Madison suddenly appeared from behind a display and shouted, "Are you going to ask him to marry us yet? The ring is burning a hole in your pocket, Daddy." Noah's hand flew to his mouth, his eyes going wide with shock and delight. Ryan glared at his daughter, who was bouncing up and down with zero remorse. Madison, that was supposed to be a surprise. Mrs. Winters and I decided I should be here for the important moment. And oops about the surprise. But surprises are like trying not to laugh when someone says you have spinach in your teeth. You just can't. Several other visitors had turned to look at them now, and Ryan felt his entire face burning. But Noah was laughing and crying at the same time. And when Ryan looked at him, he nodded. So he got down on one knee right there with his 8-year-old daughter bouncing excitedly beside him and strangers starting to gather around with their phones out. "Noah Bennett," he said, pulling the ring box from his pocket with shaking hands. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when the world didn't. You looked at my rusty toolkit and saw character instead of poverty. I'm not poor. I'm rich in enthusiasm," Madison interrupted indignantly. "My enthusiastic daughter," Ryan corrected, fighting a smile. "And somehow you fell in love with both of us. You've made us a family again. You've shown us that sometimes the person you help in the darkness becomes the light that saves you. Will you marry us? Say yes. Say yes. I already picked out my flower girl dress, and it has planets on it," Madison added helpfully. Jumping up and down, Noah was fully crying now, tears streaming down his face, but he was smiling so wide it looked like his face might split. "Yes. Yes to both of you. All of you. Forever and ever." What's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you that changed the course of your life? Sometimes the smallest actions can create the most profound ripples. Share your story in the comments below and subscribe to Heart Stories for more tales of unexpected connections that remind us how powerfully our lives can intertwine through acts of kindness.